Start that. Okay. In the wise words of the owl-eyed man, on page 175, one quote can sum this whole book. The poor son of a bitch. All right, Lauren, how are you today?
I am just great. Ready for this discussion. Let us go. Okay. Oh boy, okay, let's just I don't even know how to segue from that. Let's start with your question, oh great Bartello. Which is in reference to that last part of chapter 8. Well, I'm not reading this whole paragraph. But it's the thing with the let me move my post-it notes off of the quote. Do you want to read any of this, Amanda, or do we just
I forget what page is it? I turned away from the page. Thank you, because I turned away from that page. Okay. But yeah, here, let me just read the one important part. A new world, material without being real, where poor ghosts breathing dreams like air drifted fortuitously about, like that ashen, fantastic figure gliding toward him through the amorphous trees.
Why'd you think that was the important part?
Because that part, I feel like, was when Wilson walked up to him with the gun. There's something on my screen.
Oh, I thought you were going to keep going.
No.
Oh, well.
But no, like, I mean, I got it. It's fine. But no, because it's like, I feel like that little paragraph that the oh so great Bartello, I'm so sorry, that came out a lot more sarcastic than I wanted it to. Bartello, I promise I love you. Anyway, but no, it's like, because the paragraph that Bartello, like, definitely pointed out from chapter 8, like, I feel like that is, like, some sort of abstract, like, look into Gatsby's final moments before Wilson shot him. I'm gonna kill my dog. But yeah, anyway.
So you're saying instead of making it really literal and direct and, like, clinically sounding, he wanted to make it more emotional and figurative and, like...
Yeah, like Gatsby. If you think about it, it's kind of like Gatsby. Gatsby's death is like Gatsby. It's kind of mysterious in its sense, but you could still kind of get what's going on.
You think that's why it was like Gatsby?
No, but it's like, there's so many ways to describe Gatsby. I just can't do it. So Lauren, take it away.
Oh, I read that paragraph. That paragraph I focused on how it stopped being what Nick was looking at, and from Nick's perspective, because Nick wasn't there when Gatsby died. So instead of having it be what Nick saw of Gatsby's death, it's like the very beginning part was like the butler or whatever, and like that paragraph wasn't the characters who were with the whole book. It was just like random guy. And I felt like by having the events of like one of the most
Lauren, you died for like 5 seconds. I'm so sorry. My computer freaked out on me.
I was saying the random butler, starting Gatsby's, like, talking about his death from that random character's perspective, makes it so that we learn about Gatsby's death in the same way that Nick does, not like as though he were there and was able to witness it and to take it all in and understand why everyone did what they did, but he had to like take in like little pieces of everybody's perspectives and just also that wasn't a full sentence, but also
it's fine.
It doesn't come right out and say that Gatsby was killed. Like, at the beginning part, like, it, like, takes a while until you realize that Gatsby's, like, he gets shot and then he was killed. And I feel like having that thing where it's, like, it goes from sitting here and talking about Gatsby and what Gatsby did to being, like, this, like, mysterious wording and, like, just alluding to something happening, but him avoiding saying what happened until a little while after, it makes it so I think it adds to that effect of we don't know what happened to Gatsby in the way that Nick didn't know what happened to Gatsby, or I guess, but basically anybody except for Wilson for that matter. You okay with
that? Yeah, no, because I was turning to a page. What really gets me about that, like, it's not in like the section of chapter 8 that Bartello pointed us out to, but what really gets me was like, I feel like this happened alongside when, well, probably not when, but it's like what kind of really like kind of foreshadowed that Gatsby was gonna like not be among the living anymore was when was on not chapter 155, page 155, when like when it says, I called Gatsby's house a few minutes later, but the line was busy. I tried 4 times. Finally, an exasperated Central told me the wire was being kept open for a long distance from Detroit, blah, 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 taking out timetable, whatever. It's like, I feel like, because it's like, remember, earlier on 154, he says, I'll call you up, and Gatsby replies with a do old sport, I'll call you about noon kind of thing. So it's like they plan to have a phone call conversation since, they're still kind of pseudo best friends, as I like to put it. Since, Nick also claims, I don't like Gatsby, as he does everything for Gatsby. Anyway, bromance.
Oh, we're not getting into that, Amanda. That's not the meta theory corner we're walking into.
Yeah, I know. But it's like...
Oh. What?
It's like, I just feel like that foreshadowed to something bad's gonna happen to Gatsby since Nick couldn't get a hold of Gatsby, and then, Gatsby dies a few pages later.
Oh, I interpreted that as, like, the time not being quite in order. So, like, that, like, paragraph thing where he's calling Gatsby, in my head, I assume Gatsby was already dead then. And then the next couple of pages are, like, time backtracking and the perspective shifting to where it's leading up to his death.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Also, I'm going to note, I know this is one of the questions I had, but you talking about Nick and Gatsby. I remember at the beginning, I don't have the quote. Oh, well. There was a part where he said that he only liked honest people or, like, real people or something like that. Nick said that.
Yeah. That was
that was like a cardinal virtue or something of his.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, he obviously likes Gatsby. How do you feel about that?
It's like, I feel like Nick's friendship with Gatsby, like, goes against a lot of his principles, because it's like, because you know how he says, I like honesty? Well, multiple times throughout the novel, well, not really multiple times, but like really in like towards the end, he's like, he says like, oh, I don't really like Gatsby. I'm only really around him because he's my neighbor kind of thing. Like here, I actually have that marked down. Let me get to it real quick.
Pro skills.
Yep. Because on 154, when Nick says they're a rotten crowd, I shouted across the lawn, they're worth the whole damn bunch put together. And it's like, and then later it says, because I disapproved of him from beginning to end. Yet Nick acts as a very close friend and confidant to Gatsby. So it's like Nick saying, I don't like Gatsby, yet still remaining friends with him, kind of goes against his whole always being honest and truthful kind of thing, because that's Nick lying to himself about him actually not like actually liking Gatsby, with him saying I don't like Gatsby.
I think that goes with Nick's whole thing of thinking he's like above all of these like super like these rich people, like because still don't have the quote from the beginning, but I don't even know if it was a quote so much as just like a vibe from Nick that he felt like he was like better than all of these people who had like more money than him and like everything. Like he just felt like he was like morally above all of them. So wait, you can hear me still, right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
It's just I actually have it written down on Google Drive, so I'm pulling them up.
Okay. Can I keep talking?
So keep talking.
Yeah, so I felt like, you know, I thought he was like morally above all of those people. So I felt like when Gatsby was like, when he was giving off like those vibes of being like that rich man who was like fit in more with all of the rich people, Nick didn't want to be associated with him. But then when Gatsby was like normal man, he was like James Gatz and Jimmy and all that good stuff. When he was like a normal guy just trying to reach like the American dream and all that, he was fine saying he was his friend, because that's when he saw him as like a good man and not like a rich entitled guy.
But yeah, it's on page 59 that Nick states, I'm one of the few honest people that I've ever known. So that's what gives off the vibe of he is like, honesty is the best policy.
Thank you, Amanda.
All right. We've discussed that for 10 minutes. Let's go on to something else. So do you want to do one of your questions? Or do you want me to do one of mine? Or
You can do one of yours.
Okay. Well, in chapter 7, let me just collect my thoughts. So, on page 135, as I flip to that, down towards the bottom, it says, human sympathy has its limits. And, like, this is in reference to Tom and Gatsby's big argument over Daisy and stuff, like, as, like, they begin it kind of thing. And with Daisy freaking out, trying to, like, distract everybody to go do something else since things were getting tense and uncomfortable. My question is, what really are the limits of human sympathy?
Jeez, man, that's
in relation to the Great Gatsby.
Oh, okay. I was about to say.
To the Great Gatsby.
Oh.
AKA, we get to rag on Tom for a bit, so that's fun.
Why you think Tom's below sympathy, or you think he's unable to have sympathy at all?
I believe he's below sympathy at this point, even though like I felt sympathetic towards him towards the end after Myrtle's death. Because, you know, he was kind of torn up about it, and he was a grown man crying kind of thing. But he also cheated on Daisy without remorse, and then there's evidence that he had cheated on her in the past. Let's see, what page was that on?
I'll believe you, man. You can, if you can't find the page, it's fine.
Well, yeah, because it's like, because when they were having their little argument of whether or not Daisy loved Gatsby more, Daisy loved Tom more.
Wait, hold on. So what specifically makes him above sympathy, or like below being able to have sympathy?
Well, I believe he is below like having others' sympathy because like his more like his like that like I wouldn't say moral you know what I'm trying to. Thank you. Because it's like he's done so much stuff to Daisy in the past, yet Daisy hasn't really done that much. Yet he gets so mad at Daisy when she finally does one thing that is kind of morally wrong, which is cheating on your spouse. When, for example, on page 133, I found it. No, I didn't.
And it's okay.
Yay. I'm
really
like,
I was going to bring it up. I feel like we agree that most of them, the other characters, you can have sympathy for.
Just not really Tom at all.
Yeah, but it's like...
Never mind, I did find it. It's 131.
Okay.
But yeah, it's like, Daisy says, "You're revolting," said Daisy. She turned to me, and her voice dropping an octave lower filled the room with thrilling scorn. "Do you know why we left Chicago? I'm surprised that they didn't treat you to the story of that little spree," because Tom references his cheating on Daisy as sprees. So we know that he's cheated on her in the past. So that's why, like, Daisy's like, "Dude, you've done it to me. Why can't I do it to you?" kind of thing. And it's like, we also know Tom, racist, kind of he's just overall like he's painted as such a bad person in the novel because like he cheats on his wife, he's racist.
I don't mean to cut you off. I feel like this discussion's not going anywhere.
Yeah, it's really not. So please go ahead.
Okay. How about we just go into a deep rabbit hole? That green light, huh? How do you feel about that bad boy? We can reference that thing at the end. I want to bring up the second to last paragraph with the Gatsby believes in the green light, the orgastic future that year by year recedes before us. It eludes us then, but that's no matter. Tomorrow we will run faster, stretch our arms out farther, and one fine morning. Do you think the green light was a positive thing or a negative thing?
I believe it could have been both. And I shall explain myself.
Okay.
Okay. So at the beginning, it's like when we're first introduced to the green light, Gatsby's staring out towards it. And then later on, we find out that green light was coming from the port of the Buchanan household, right? So then I found the green light to represent hope for Gatsby because he knew that the thing that he wanted back and the past and the life he wanted back was just across the way at that green light. and like it was technically within reach, yet he couldn't like obtain it. So that represented his hope in a way. But eventually, when he finally is able to attain that hope back, that's when it finally like goes away and everything starts going downhill, because there's the argument between Tom and himself, and then of course Gatsby's death due to the fact that Daisy ran over Myrtle and killed her. Since, you know, Tom had to throw Gatsby under the bus for that. Again, back to why he doesn't deserve sympathy.
You're a little bit salty about that, aren't you?
Oh yeah, very. Because I liked Gatsby, okay? Anyway. So it's like, I believe the green light represented both hope and then the dashing of hope. Does that make sense?
You know, I get that, because I was more on the negative side, but I see the positive side, how it was positive and it gradually became a negative thing. But to me, when I saw the green light, especially with that last quote at the end, it became this thing that represented the future that was just out of reach for Gatsby. Like, it, in theory, it was this hopeful thing. Like, it was all these good things in, I guess, his past. I mean, his past before, not his future. But it was all of these good things in his life that he wanted, but because it was like across the dock or like across the bay or whatever, he would never be able to reach it. He would never be able to get that life that he wanted that was good to him. So it felt unhappy to me.
Yeah, I can definitely see that point of view, because it's like we find out that Gatsby is going after something that he literally just cannot obtain no matter how hard he tries. So that definitely drives the last page home, and like the last few lines with your point of chasing an unobtainable future kind of thing. So yeah, okay. Do you think that one's good and discussed?
Yeah.
Okay. You want to talk about Eckelberg?
Oh boy.
All right. So the billboard of TJ Eckelberg appears once again, starting on page 124, and then also on 159. Just basically every time something negative that's going to affect all the characters is about to happen. So, for example, on 124, Eckelberg appears kind of before the argument happens, like when everything starts to go downhill from their little luncheon powwow. And then on 159, he appears when Wilson says, "You may fool me, but you can't fool God." And he's staring up at the eyes of Dr. TJ Eckelberg and says that God sees everything. And that's just before he goes out to find out who had the car and then goes out to kill Gatsby. So that's another thing, like, words, another example of something bad about to happen. So it's like when Wilson mentions that, it's like, I know we've like discussed the eyes of God earlier, like in the first one, but why do you think Wilson would specifically refer to Eckelberg being the eyes of God?
I think Wilson unlike every other character, because I think Myrtle, I don't know, maybe this was just a feeling I got, but I don't think she was at home that much, especially if she was like cheating on her husband. I think the only person who was, because their house was across from the billboard, I think the only person who had to see like the eyes of God every single day of his life was Wilson. So he just came to see those eyes like judging him all the time, every day, even though he assumably didn't do anything. So then that one time when something bad happens and he had those eyes there, and if they were the eyes of God, then he just looked at them and was like, why did oops, got a paper cut from my book.
Oh,
It was like he was like, why did this happen? Like, if God was there, why did God not do anything to help? If God was just sitting there and watching instead of doing anything. Man, that got dark real fast.
Yeah, that really did.
It got darker than I meant to make it go.
Oh, I can make it go. I can make it go even darker.
Please, darker, yes.
And then when Wilson went out to go find out who owned the car, he took the power of God into his own hands to serve out justice.
Oh no, that is darker. Are you saying he took the power of God in his own hands because he felt like God didn't do right before, so he was like, well, if God can't fix it, I'll fix it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's we got really dark there for a second. Let's get off of that. Do you want to talk about something else?
That's not where I thought that was gonna go.
Me either. But yeah, Isaac God sees everything. Bible references, how to read literature like a professor. So yeah, Lauren, please bring up something else because that got really dark and I'm kind of uncomfortable now.
How do you feel about Gatsby's dad? I know we can't talk about this for that long. I don't have a ton to say about it, but this is the only time we get anybody who, I guess, genuinely knows Gatsby, like before he was rich and just knows him in general. And he calls him Jimmy the whole time. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about that boy?
It's like I feel like Gatsby's father has like still kind of has like a childish, well, not like childish on his part, but still like perceives his son as a child and was like he would have been so successful. Like he was just really proud of his kid, even though he didn't quite know of all of the shady things Gatsby did to come into his wealth.
He just had like an innocent view of Gatsby because he didn't see everything else. That's what you're saying, right?
Which reminds me, it was really sad during the funeral how nobody came and how Nick was trying so hard to get somebody for him. Like, let's see, where is it?
Yeah, it's that when he called people, like people who had shown up to all the parties and stuff. He was like, "Hey, Gatsby died. You want to go to his funeral?" And they were like, "Oh, Gatsby? Who? Gatsby?"
But yeah,
Gatsby.
it's like
what makes me didn't actually care about him.
What makes me so upset is that Nick says, I wanted to get somebody for him. I wanted to go into the room where he lay and reassure him. I'll get somebody for you, Gatsby. Don't worry. Just trust me. I'll get somebody for you. And it's like, at that point, I don't realize that Nick is literally the one person that's there for him at that point. And it just makes me so upset because Nick doesn't realize he was actually a lot closer to Gatsby than he initially thought. And it's
or maybe he was just in denial, that classic denial.
Oh yeah, just that set the like what was it? 7 was it 5 stages of grief or 7 stages of grief?
I don't know.
But yeah, there's this whole stages of grief thing where you go through denial, anger, bargaining, grief, and acceptance. Yeah, so it's 5.
Yeah.
So it's like he may have been in the denial stage at that point, since the 5 stages of grief starts with denial.
I was gonna say I think he's in denial because there were times when Gatsby like went against what his morals were, and then there were times when Gatsby went for it, and I feel like he didn't want to admit that he was like fully friends with this guy that often went against all of these like really strict morals that he had set in his head for himself.
Yeah, especially since Gatsby came into his wealth by very illegal means, aka bootlegging.
Well, very illegal.
And it's like, you know, he wasn't rich to begin with because Tom gets on his case about wearing pink suits since, you know, if you were rich at that time, you didn't wear pink.
I was saying, Bartello, we looked that up because who knows the connotation of pink back then. Apparently, rich people, they were all supposed to wear like normal looking clothes. And Gatsby was like, I'm wearing pink. And they were like, you gotta wear normie clothes. That's what the rich people wear. You're not a rich man if you're wearing pink. So yeah, that's the fun fact that we've all learned here.
But nah, it's like, just Gatsby's death is so sad because at the beginning we see him as somebody who has all these people around him and he seems truly great. And then he has a fall from grace when literally nobody arrives at his funeral.
Oh, I thought you were going to note that he dies falling into his pool, you know, the representation of his wealth. He dies falling into his wealth. His money couldn't save him. I thought you were going to bring that up, because I'll bring that up.
Go ahead, please.
His pool, his rich person pool, is the one time he dies. Like, the book, it literally alludes to the pool over and over and over, and he's like, I'll use it later. And the one time he does, it's the end of summer, you know. The end of that.
And the end of summer is the end of youth, and fall goes into middle age and decline, and then...
And middle age that he didn't make it to, and then he fell into his pool, you know. So even though he made all of that money because he was hoping, I mean, he was hoping to get Daisy, but by extension, hoping to have a happy life. All of the work he did to be happy didn't save him in the end.
Reminds me of how it's like, Nick had mentioned something about Daisy. Let's see, where was
That's
it?
descriptive. I want to be a little bit more specific than that.
Yeah, no, I'll explain it. Because he had mentioned how he was upset that, like, Daisy, he couldn't get a hold of him. Gonna get a hold of her. Because, like, you know, like, like, Gatsby had died and they left. And he was mad that he couldn't get a hold of her. And it's like, he finally, like, comes to the realization
it's
that...
164.
Oh, thank you. That she had been changed because of, like, wealth and all that happy stuff. Yeah, I honestly cannot find the quote that I wanted to say.
Oh, I don't know what quote you meant, but I found the part with that they left no address and that they just vanished.
Because it's like, there was a part where he literally says that wealth had affected Daisy. And I remember it being at the top of a page, and I marked it, and now I can't find it, and it's making me sad.
Is it the part about them being careless?
Yes, I just found it. It's on 179. Let's see. They were careless people, Tom and Daisy. They smashed up things and creatures and then retreated back into their money or their vast carelessness or whatever it was that kept them together and let other people clean up the mess they had made. So, AKA, Daisy was technically the one who murdered Myrtle. And then, in order to clean up the mess, they blamed Gatsby and ran away.
Okay, I don't know why you said technically. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I know.
That's not a conspiracy theory. That's literally the plot of it.
But yeah, and it's like, because like at first it seemed like at the beginning, Daisy was more on the side of a person that Nick would associate with, but by the end, he's realizing that she changed for the worse.
I was gonna say though, do you think she changed, or do you think Nick just learned more about her?
Like, learn more about her, but like, because it's like, I say change because like at first he had a perception of her, but that perception changed, kind of thing.
I mean, the only change I can see possibly in Daisy is that Gatsby had some kind of hope for her to also have like a, because I assume she wasn't happy with Tom. No, I know she wasn't happy with Tom.
Oh, yeah.
So I feel like Gatsby could have been like, even though she didn't want to go back to the past, she could see like a happy life with him.
Mm-hmm.
And then with him dying, she doesn't see that anymore, so she doesn't care anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, so we got a minute left. Let's talk about that. Take it away, Lord.
Boy. Bartello, you knew we were going to talk about this. I don't care if we go over. You know we got to talk about it. The Great Gatsby. This was not the first title Fitzgerald came up with. There were like 5 others, but this is the title he finally went with. The Great Gatsby. Was Gatsby great? Amanda Wells, take it away.
No!
I'm never with an explanation.
Give me a Okay, so I'm arguing the side of no, Gatsby was not great because he had come into his wealth by untruthful means. He threw all these parties to try to get the attention of one person, but instead got the attention of many others, but those people didn't actually care about him. I'm doing homework. Yeah, you're getting loud. Sorry. Anyway. Where was I? Thanks, Mom.
His unlegal means of getting money and the parties.
And it's like the parties, and it's like you would think people cared about him, but they only cared about his alcohol and like having fun at said parties. And then you finally find out that he's a very isolated person. He had to craft a lie to be like his backstory, even though like much of his backstory was a fakery. And then you could truly tell he isn't great when at the end of the story, nobody except for maybe 2 or 3 people show up to his funeral. So yeah.
Yeah. So Bartolo, I don't see, maybe you don't know where this is going, but I'm gonna argue yes. because we're fun. So I'm gonna segue right to the funeral part. At Amanda. Okay, you're there. With the funeral thing. If Gatsby is great, maybe nobody showed up to his funeral because nobody was great and they were all awful people. And they weren't good enough.
Yo!
I'm just saying. That's the thing. Like, if Gatsby was great, and we have this idea that all of the other people who went to these parties were all, like, not good people, so then none of them were good enough to be at a good man's funeral.
Yep, you
I
definitely
broke Amanda. I didn't even get to my actual argument yet, and I already convinced Amanda.
Just go.
Note to the quote on page 2. Flashback to here. No, Gatsby turned out alright at the end. It was what preyed on Gatsby. What foul dust floated in the wake of his dreams. I felt like Gatsby was great, but it was just all of the...
Keep going, I totally just nailed
all of the... he was great because of his search for the American dream and wanting to be wanting to be a great man and have all this stuff and be happy and fit all of these ideals. It made him great, but all of the side effects of doing that, all of the negatives of gaining wealth and trying to reach that that high point in the world, all of those things, they weighed down on him, and if anything, they made him worse, or they made him appear to be worse, or they muddied his morals or whatever. So, and in search of his dreams, the dreams that made him great, he got society just kept banging down on him from trying to reach his dreams until it killed him in the end. So he was great, and he got killed for it. That's what I'm saying. Ayo!
I'm just gonna say something real quick before we end this, because oh my god, that just gave me a thought. Because at first, at the beginning, the rich people, we're shown oh hey, these are actually decent people, but by the end we find out they're all I can't say that word during a Scrag seminar. Not great people. You know what I want to say, Bartolo. It starts with an A. Because it's we find out that Tom and Daisy hide behind their wealth and their carelessness to get away with murder. And then Jordan, at first, we think that she's genuinely interested in Nick, but at the end, we find out that it was literally just a summer fling and that she didn't give a crap. But Gatsby, who we're introduced to as being someone who's kind of sketchy, at the end, we see him more in an honest light. Lauren, you broke me.
That's a good. I didn't realize that everybody had done a flip.
Everybody flipped.
We're both broken. That's cool.
Okay,
it's a good time to end this.
Goodbye, my old sport. Until we meet again in Frankenstein.
Again, old sport.